1 minute to the live stream. When you get to it, Tony can say there's 1 minute to the live stream. 1 minute to broadcast. The live stream has started.
Good evening. Welcome to the Durham Planning Commission. The members of the Durham Planning Commission are appointed by the City Council, the County Board of Commissioners, and the County Board of Commissioners to make recommendations to the elected officials. We emphasize that the elected officials have the final say on any issue before us tonight. While this meeting is being conducted in person, it is also accessible through the Zoom virtual meeting platform. In the virtual meeting platform, public participants do not have the ability to talk or be seen on video by default. In order to maintain meeting decorum and a discernible record of the meeting, the chat function has been disabled. For those attending in person, if you plan to speak on an agenda item tonight, please go to the table to my left and sign up to speak. When speaking, please state your name and your address clearly when you come to the podium. Please speak directly into the microphone. If you are attending the meeting virtually, you will be given the ability to speak at the appropriate time. If you have pre-registered, your name will be called so you can make your comments just like an in-person public hearing. You may also call in during the meeting tonight by dialing 1-301-715-8592. If you call in during the meeting, you will need to wait until the particular public hearing you are interested in starts. After all of the pre-registered speakers have shared their comments, I will ask if there is anyone else wishing to speak. At that point, you will need to digitally raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone. And when recognized, please state your name and your address before making your comments. The applicant has a total of 10 minutes for a presentation, and each speaker after the applicant has 2 minutes to speak. Commissioners, as a reminder, after the public hearing is closed, you obtain the floor by being recognized by the chair. Commission members, please remember that you share your time with your fellow commissioners. Keep your comments and questions pithy. Please don't repeat topics that have already been discussed or questioned. The time to make all public statements is before motions are made. Once a motion is on the floor and further discussion regarding that motion must come after a second. All motions are stated in the affirmative, so if a motion fails or ties, the recommendation is for denial. Finally, I ask that everyone here, the commission members, the staff, and the public, to conduct themselves in a courteous and respectful manner. If someone fails to act in that manner, the chair will ask the offending person or persons to leave the meeting until such time they regain personal control. If decorum fails to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until a genuine commitment to act respectful and courteous is observed. Thank you. Staff, may we have the roll call, please?
Chair Cameron.
Here.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
Here.
Commissioner Cutright.
Here.
Commissioner Graves-Mans has requested an excused absence. Commissioner Durham.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Koback.
Here.
Commissioner McIver.
Here.
Commissioner Cease.
Here.
Commissioner Valentine.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Wauk.
Here.
And Commissioner Young has requested an excused absence.
Thank you. We have an established quorum.
Sorry, say that again?
We have a quorum?
We do.
Yes, thank you. There are no adjustments to the agenda. Next, we have approval of the minutes and consistency statements. Do we have a motion to approve from the April 9th, 2004 meeting?
So move. Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Cease to approve the minutes and the consistency statements from the April 9th, 2024 meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We will move into the public hearings for the initial zoning map changes. The first case is Z2300020 Woodlands Preserve, Koback Drive. May we have the staff report, please?
Chair Cameron, before we begin, staff would like to state for the record that all Planning Department hearing items have been advertised and noticed in accordance with state and local law, and affidavits of all notices are on file in the Planning Department.
Good evening, Chair Cameron, Vice Chair Shigaris, and Honorable Planning Commissioners. Brooke Roper with the Planning Department. The following information summarizes the application. Bill Marlowe of Marlowe Development Partners requests annexation of one parcel of land totaling 4.3 acres and located along Farrell Road to connect to city water and sewer. The current zoning is residential suburban 20 and would not change if annexed. The properties are currently designated established residential on the place type map, and the residential suburban 20 zoning is consistent with that place type. Moving on to the next slide, this is a direct translation in which the existing Durham County zoning is translated to the identical Durham City zoning district upon the annexation of their property into the city limits. A translational zoning does not and cannot include a development plan, and any future development may proceed according to what the zoning would allow. There is an associated annexation petition associated with this case, which is case BDG 23-00026. The existing zoning is residential suburban, and the site is surrounded by residential suburban 20. The aerial map shows the general location of the project within northern Durham. As I mentioned earlier, the place type designation for this site is established residential. The area to be annexed is not contiguous to the primary corporate limits, but is contiguous to a city satellite area. Again, this is a direct translation, meaning that there is no mechanism to commit to anything in excess or of the ordinance. What is allowed by the UDO is what will be allowed on the property in the future. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on September 25th, 2023, where 13 community members were in attendance. Finally, while the applicant has noted their intent to only develop 6 single-family units, the proposal would allow the development of up to 8 single-family units on a vacant property in order to connect to city water and sewer. The site for the proposed single-family units is located in northern Durham, just south of Treyburn. The proposal is consistent with all of the policies of the new comprehensive plan, which apply to direct translational zonings as found in attachment F. The proposal is consistent with the place type map designation of established residential. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available to answer questions.
Thank you. At this time, the chair will open the public hearing. Do we have the applicant present? I see there was I see, yes, Bill Marlowe and Timothy Grisinger. Please unmute yourself.
Hey, this is Bill Marlowe.
Go ahead, sir.
I don't have anything else to add unless Tim does.
Please unmute yourself, Tim.
Yes. Hey, good evening. I don't have anything else to add either, unless the commissioners have any questions.
Can both of you please officially state your names and your addresses?
Yeah, my name is Bill Marlowe. My address is 3700 Computer Drive in Raleigh.
Timothy Grisinger, 112 Piperwood Drive, Cary, North Carolina.
Thank you. There's nothing to add? All right. Do we have any community members in person that would like to speak? There's no one that's pre-registered. Is there anyone on the Zoom? Alexander Fields.
Yes, good afternoon, thank you. I'm Alexander Fields, a resident of the community that's subject to this plan decision. Can it be stated for the record what the intent of the development is and how it would affect the surrounding property that's still zoned as county? What benefits do the community residents receive from this intended purpose or change of the land use?
Sir, did you state your address? I'm sorry.
1710 Torredge Road.
Okay. So we have, I think the applicant has your question noted. We'll take all questions at the end. I thought I saw another community member's hand raised on the Zoom, and it went down. Is there anyone else on the Zoom that would like to speak? Would the applicant like to address that question?
Hey, can y'all hear me? I'm trying to
Yes.
unmute. Yeah, so I think the question was maybe about the change in use. The staff report did note that it's a direct translation, so there's no actual zoning map change. The land as it's zoned now is intended for single-family development, and that is the plan with, this annexation request. These will be single-family lots that will be developing on this property.
Thank you. Are there any other, because we're not going to have a Q&A going back and forth. Are there any other community members that would like to have any questions? One last time to ask, are there any other community members that would like to ask or speak on this case that is on the Zoom? If not, I am going to close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed, and we will open now for commissioner discussion and questions. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. One question for the applicant. Well, two-part question. One, does this tie into the original Woodland Preserve approval? And with that question, yes or no, if that was included, what does this change from then to now? I'm looking at both the Koback, and we're about to talk after that with the Torredge Road. So I'm just trying to put it into context other than it was zoned for single housing. You're going to do single housing. Has anything changed other than the annex? Thank you, Chair.
No, the plan is just to annex these two, I think it's 4 lots on Torredge Road and maybe these 5 on Koback. We're just tying this into Woodlands Preserve Phase 2, as you noted. So yes, this is, the second phase of Woodlands Preserve. And, this will allow us to make a street tie-in. It'll allow us to add a couple of extra lots, on the north and south side of that road, where this is stubbing in to Koback from the Woodlands Preserve subdivision.
And just one follow-up question. A word I learned when I moved to North Carolina, impervious space. Is this based on the collection of impervious space from houses that previously were built that have been collected to support this application, or were those always built into the original plan?
I may have to defer to Tim on that. I think all the impervious surface will be designed per the UDO once we go into the CD process. So the annexation of these lots is not specifically intended to give us more impervious surface area, if that's the question.
If I could just clarify, it was more of, did you have to collect impervious space from buildings that you already built, and do those residents know about it to support this development?
Yeah, so it'll all be designed per code. This annexation is strictly just to add a little bit more density and get, those 6 extra units that was mentioned in the staff report.
Okay. Commissioner Cease?
Just a process question for staff. In the past, annexation requests have not been appearing before Planning Commission. Have just direct translational zoning requests associated with the annexation? Has that come before Planning Commission in the past?
This is a new process that we're doing. Yeah, so you'll be starting to see these coming to Planning Commission.
Okay. Whether it's a direct translational or a request for a change in zoning. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of new for us.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I have a question for the applicant. Can you speak more about the road tie-in? Are you going to connect to Whispering Meadow Lane, to Palomino Lane? What exactly road tie-in are you talking about?
Yeah, so we will extend the Palomino lane into the, Phase 2 section of Woodlands Preserve.
What exactly is it going to connect to?
Future streets that are being designed right now.
All right.
Any additional questions from the commissioners? Are you ready to move this case forward? May I have a motion to move this case forward, please?
Chair, as it relates to case Z2300040A and annexation BDG 2300026 Woodlands Preserve, Koback Drive, make a motion that we send this case forward to City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Valentine to move case Z2300040A, annexation BDG 2300026 Woodlands Preserve, Koback Drive, forward with a favorable recommendation to City Council. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Chair Cameron,
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigaris,
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright,
Yes.
Commissioner Durham,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kopak,
Yes.
Commissioner McIver,
Yes.
Commissioner Cease,
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Wauck.
Yes.
That's it. Motion passes 12-0,
Thank you.
or 11-0.
At this time, we have case Z2300052A, annexation BDG 2300034 Woodlands Preserve, Torredge Road. May we have the staff report, please?
Brooke Roper, City County Planning. Thanks, Chris. The following information summarizes this application. Bill Marlowe of Marlowe Development Partners requests annexation of one parcel of land totaling 3.7 acres and located along Farrell Road to connect to city water and sewer. The current zoning is residential suburban 20 and would not change if annexed. The properties are currently designated established residential on the place type map, and the residential suburban 20 zoning is consistent with this designated place type. A direct translation, also known as an initial zoning map change, is one in which the county zoning becomes city zoning in conjunction with an annexation. The existing zoning is residential suburban 20, and the site is surrounded by residential suburban 20. The aerial map shows the general location of the project within northern Durham. The place type designated for this site, again, is established residential. The area to be annexed is not contiguous to the primary corporate limits, but is contiguous to a city satellite area. Again, this is a direct translation, which means that there is no mechanism to commit to anything in excess of the ordinance. What is allowed by the UDO is what will be allowed on this property in the future. A neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on September 25th, where 13 members were in attendance. The proposal would allow the development of up to 7 single-family units on a vacant property to connect to city water and sewer. The site for the proposed apartment units is located in northern Durham, just south of Treyburn. This proposal is consistent with all policies of the new comprehensive plan, which apply to direct translational zonings. The proposal is consistent with the place type map designation of established residential. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available to answer questions.
Thank you. At this time, the chair is opening the public hearing. Does the applicant have any, a presentation, I'm sorry? Mr. Barlow and I see you're still on.
Yes, I don't have anything else to add at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any community members in person or in Zoom that would like to present? If you're on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function if you would have any comments. Going once. Going twice. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and now going to open up for commissioner discussion and questions. Commissioner Johnson.
Just one question for the applicant. When I look at the map, zoning contact map 5, it shows 5 plats or 5 areas marked off, and yet this is up to 7. Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 7? Is that zone context map going to change in terms of layout?
Yeah, we're planning on 6 single-family units on this, 5 parcels as well. So again, this is just to take a road through that new Phase 2 subdivision, connect it to Torredge, and add a little bit more density on either side of that road.
Any other questions for the applicant? Are we ready to move this case forward? May I have a motion to move this case forward, please?
Chair, as it relates to case Z2300020 annexation BDG 2300034, Woodlands Preserve, Torredge Road, I make a motion that we move this case forward to City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Cease to move case Z2300052A, annexation case BDG 2300034, Woodlands Preserve, Torredge Road, forward with a favorable recommendation to City Council. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright.
Yes.
Commissioner Durham.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Koback.
Yes.
Commissioner McIver.
Yes.
Commissioner Cease.
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Commissioner Wauk.
Yes.
The motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. We're now moving into agenda item public hearings, zoning map changes. The case now coming before us is Z2300020 Farrington Road Multifamily. May we have the staff report, please?
Good evening. My name is Sarah Long with City County Planning, and I will be presenting to you the case number Z23020 Farrington Road Multifamily. The following information summarizes the application. Dan Jewell of Thomas and Hutton proposes to change the zoning designation of 4 parcels of land totaling 19.549 acres and located between 5200 and 5300 block of Farrington Road. The current zoning is residential suburban 20, and the applicant proposes to change the designation to planning development residential, or PDR, 21.229. to allow up to 415 multifamily apartments and townhouse units. The existing zoning is mixed residential, and the planning staff does not recommend changing the place type map. As I stated before, the existing zoning is residential suburban 20. The site is surrounded by residential suburban 20 and PDR zoning with lower densities as indicated in the shades of blue. Planning staff does not intend to recommend or does not recommend a change to the place type map. as mixed residential neighborhood. And the aerial map shows the general location of the project to the west of Farrington Road and I-40. The applicant has included textual commitments, including a minimum of 8 units to be income restricted, a commitment to offset the center line of the southern access point to the east or west of the center line of the northern access point, the provision of parallel parking along both sides of Niagara Drive from its existing southern terminus to the first stop condition, and the addition of 1 traffic calming measure internal to the site. The neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with the UDO requirements on June 12, 2023, and 82 community members attended this meeting. An additional meeting was held on November 13, 2023, with 80 community members in attendance. This proposal, again, would allow the development of 415 multifamily apartments and townhousing units on 4 parcels of land, with 8 of the 415 units being designated as income restricted. The proposal is consistent with the place site map designation of mixed residential neighborhood. Staff and applicant are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, the chair is opening the public hearing. May we have the applicant presentation, please?
There was. Good. Yeah, it's on there. Good evening, Chair Cameron, Vice Chair Shigaris, and members of the Planning Commission. I am Neil Ghosh at the Morningstar Law Group at 700 West Main Street here in Durham. And I want to say thank you to Ms. Long for presenting the case. We have a few folks with us this evening. On the land design side, we have Dan Jewell from Thomas Hutton. We also have Earl Llewellyn from Kimley Horn, and he's here on traffic. And in a minute, you will hear from Kyle Whitaker, who is with Northwood Raven, the developer of this project. Before I turn it over to him, I wanted to say that I have been impressed with this client's determination to meet with and involve the community in these discussions. There's no doubt that they've gone above and beyond as far as community engagement. And it's more than that. We did not simply just have a few more meetings. The client has made several commitments on the development plan directly related to the feedback we have received from neighbors throughout the many meetings we've had. I think the best way to start is with Mr. Whitaker, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the level of community engagement here.
Good evening. Sorry, my name is Kyle Whitaker, 3015 Carrington Mill Road in Morrisville. Thanks, Neil. My name is Kyle Whitaker, development partner with Northwood Raven. Wanted to talk a little bit about the community engagement efforts that we've undertaken here, and specifically how those conversations with the neighbors and the community have really shaped the rezoning application that we're discussing here tonight. So shortly after our initial community meeting back in June of last year, Denny reached out to me with Culp Arbor, expressed some of their concerns with the proposed development of the property that we were looking at just to the south of their neighborhood. So over the following months, we met with a group of 4 or 5 members of the community. We brought in our design team. We reviewed some of our preliminary concept plans for the project. We brought in Earl, talked extensively about the traffic, the TIA, and most importantly, we tried to listen and tried to understand the concerns of the neighbors and really see how we could work together and kind of find some compromises and create the best project. So, skip this, scroll down. There we go. So I skipped my slide. So what did we hear? Over the course of those meetings, we discussed a lot of concerns from the neighbors, everything from density and height to traffic and safety. We talked about buffers, we talked about waste screening, unit mix, building materials, and I've got a list of kind of some of those key items here, but, really, as we looked at each one of those, we tried to look and see if there was an opportunity for us to address the concern, or if not, is there a way that we can try to mitigate that concern or any impacts that might be of concern to the neighbors. We also looked at the ordinance. Some of the concerns were already addressed there, so we didn't feel a need that we needed to duplicate that. Things like stormwater management or placement of recreational facilities like our pool and other parts of the project. And at the end of the day, we were able to, we think, accommodate or make some commitments to address some of those concerns, or at least help alleviate the vast majority of them. So I did want to dive into a few of these in a little more depth, just to kind of see how they translated from our discussions with the neighborhood into the rezoning application. So I want to touch on density and height, and then traffic and safety. So one of the initial concerns that we obviously heard was about the density and the height of the buildings, especially in relation to Culp Arbor, because it is lower density, single family just to our north. So what did we do in response to that? First, we reduced our density down to the 415 units max. We didn't reduce the overall allowable height. We still plan to do, 4-story apartment buildings, but what we did do was kind of look at the zone. Skip down a slide, sorry. Whoop, out of order. We did try to make that transition of density more gradual from the existing neighborhoods into our development. So we had a zone kind of at the north portion of the site. We increased that from 100 feet from the property line to 150 feet. We also expanded it east-west to ensure that we kind of aligned that zone of where the existing homes are in Culp Arbor. We also introduced a third product type, which was a detached style dwelling unit, in addition to the townhomes and apartment units as well. And then we actually put restrictions in that area where we have the 35-foot height cap, that is only exclusively for townhome style or detached style dwelling units, so no apartment units can go in that zone directly adjacent to Culp Arbor. So what we really tried to do is look at how can we ease that transition, make it a little more gradual as it goes from lower density, lower scale single family to a more dense apartment development, similar to what we see in other parts of Farrington. The other major concern we discussed at length was traffic and safety, specifically safety concerns associated with potential for cut-through traffic at the connection of Niagara Drive, which you can see on the bottom here is kind of that blue line. Well, I guess Niagara exists on the kind of off the page there. So ultimately, we're putting in measures that we're recommending in our TIA for our entrance exit onto Farrington that we think will accommodate the traffic from our site. But we also tried to look at, hey, how can we put in place some design measures and conditions that really try to discourage any cut-through traffic and really try to slow traffic down from an overall safety standpoint for our residents, pedestrians, and for everybody. That's something that we want in our community as well. So what did those commitments look like over the course of our conversations, and how do they translate to the development plan? What we agreed, like was mentioned in the staff report, to offset the connection of Niagara Drive. We have to connect to the north to the existing road, but we also have to stub to the south, so we are offsetting that to force a movement of traffic and slow traffic down. We committed to installing the parallel parking that was mentioned, once again trying to reduce the width of the street to slow traffic down. We also committed to pursuing those additional traffic calming measures, stop signs, median islands, things like that. We haven't designed the roads fully yet, so that's one we've got to work with city transportation staff to make sure we're in compliance with the road ordinances. And then the other piece that we also looked at is we committed to some off-site improvements to specifically address the concerns in Culp Arbor, and that was striping edge lines to once again reduce down. Whoa, went the wrong way. So the top is an existing image of Niagara and Culp Arbor. We agreed to put edge lines in to kind of narrow that drive lane and slow traffic once again and improve safety. So ultimately, over the course of our 9 meetings, I think they were very productive and collaborative. I do want to say thank you to the community members that we met with. Thanks for being willing to have an open conversation. That's not always the case in scenarios like that, and I think the results are in what you see in the development plan. Thank you.
And thank you, Kyle. I see I don't have that much time left, so I'll just go through a couple things here. Challenges are posed anytime new development is proposed next to established residential areas. I think this project fits very nicely within the framework of the new comprehensive plan. The place site map designates this property and this surrounding area for mixed residential. And within that mixed residential designation, you've got a single-family PDR across the street, and you've got some single-family on the other side of us. So the addition of apartments, I think, is warranted here, and also helps achieve ultimately the vision for a mixed residential area of the Playside map. I would say the comp plan also recognizes the need to respect existing neighborhoods, but tries to balance that with the need to provide housing in a growing city. And in that same vein, we have limited height in our northern section and provided for a gradual transition from existing residential. We also are pursuing traffic calming measures that are, above and beyond anything a TIA would recommend internal to the street. And I think overall, this is a thoughtful project that helps achieve some of the big picture items outlined in the comp plan, while at the same time responding to the important details raised by area residents. Sometimes those things can be at odds, but I think this developer has found some great ways to do both simultaneously, and I applaud them for that, and I hope you will too. And we thank you for your time, and our team is available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to call community members that have signed up in person to present. I know that there is a group that has a presentation, correct? If you could get your presentation together, and I think you're going to present concurrently, and if you can line up so you can do that, that would be great. So you don't waste any of your minutes or your seconds.
We're trying to get rid of.
We're trying to get rid of the previous one.
They need some assistance over here.
We know how to get ours up, but we didn't know how to
Yep,
get theirs
I completely understand.
No, I'm trying to get the clicker up there.
down. Thank you.
Well, that would help, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Barbara.
You're great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. Ready? Good evening. I'm Barbara Wittes. I am a 6-year resident of Villa of Culp Arbor, and I reside at 5217 Niagara Drive. Tonight, you will hear our VCA negotiation team present our opposition to Northwood Raven's rezoning application, including an overview of our negotiations, focusing on traffic density and traffic calming. We recognize that zoning is a privilege, not a right. Given our opposition, we request a continuance for a minimum of 60 days to allow a more thoughtful and intentional plan reflecting consensus among the stakeholders. Alternatively, we request that the developer's rezoning application be disproved as submitted. Villas at Culp Arbor was approved in 2009, requiring that a resident over the age of 55 live in 90% of the homes. In return, seniors have an age-in-place option if they cannot or do not want to live with a relative in a continuing care facility or in a nursing home. We have over 40% of our residents over the age of 80. VCA has 128 homes. Half of our residents have to walk in the streets to get to their mailboxes. All of our sidewalks are only on one side of the street. Many residents have resided in their homes since the beginning. During the negotiations team's discussions with Northwood Raven, verbal assurances were made, significant portions of which are absent from their rezoning proposal. Tonight's presentation flows from the letter the VCA negotiation team sent to the planning commissioners. Given our opposition to the Northwest Raven zoning application, we request a continuance for a minimum of 60 days to allow a more thoughtful and intentional plan reflecting consensus among the stakeholders. Alternatively, we request that the developer's rezoning application be disproved as submitted. Thank you. Our next speaker is Judy Teskey, a member of our negotiation team.
Good evening. I'm Judy Teskey, 5209 Niagara Drive. So you've already seen the general outline, but you can see our VCA on the north, the proposed Northwood Raven development on the south, Farrington's running along the right-hand side there, just to reorient you. We learned about this rezoning request last summer. It was on Social Pinpoint, and within weeks, there were dozens of comments about the traffic, the safety of our neighborhood, et cetera. So within VCA, we formed a group to look at how this was going to affect us. What does it mean to our aging in place community? And the most important concerns were a scaled down neighborhood with a thoughtful transition and traffic safety. So we met with Northwood Raven, we got a hold of them, had a couple meetings, quite a few actually. And by September, they were showing us this draft. It includes the apartments toward the back in orange, the blue cottage-style units that they mentioned on our border, as well as the southern border surrounded by townhomes. So this led us to believe that they're listening to us. There's also, you can see a little bit of the traffic calming that Kyle discussed. There was a second mandatory meeting on the 13th of November. There were actually over 100 people, residents and neighbors there. Strong interest. You can see what they showed us in that meeting looks pretty similar to the September diagram, a little bit more bubble diagram, but similar. Then what was submitted here only shows the 35-foot in the top adjacent to us. The rest of the area is zoned for whatever, 65 feet. It could be anything. So we had a lot of verbal assurances, and we just would like to see them reflected in the actual plan. Next speaker is John.
I'm John Gunter, 103 Pino Court. I'm going to speak to the traffic issues that we're concerned about. Judy's, there we go, okay. This slide shows the two developments that Judy had on her first slide. You see I-40 as the yellow stripe, and then to the left of that is Farrington Road, and then the developments. What's I want to show is what's going on south of us. Below us, there is some already completed and some uncompleted in the outlines that is going to contribute heavily to the density on Farrington Road, and that's what we're concerned about. We need for you to look at the bigger picture than what's just going on in this development. Here's a list of the developments there. I'm not going to go through this. I just put it up for emphasis on the magnitude, and so you can see the numbers of units that are going in. All the way down within about a half a mile, you've got all this development going on, and that's going to add a lot of traffic to Farrington Road. This is straight from the traffic impact analysis that was done for us, for the developer that he submitted. You see the axes are labeled in cars per minute. You see southbound traffic in blue and northbound traffic in orange. In the mornings, a person today is looking at perhaps 10 cars coming from the southbound direction when he's trying to make a right turn onto Farrington. In the future, he will be looking at 15 cars. If you're trying to make a left turn, a lot of us are 60 and older, left turns are intimidating. You have even more cars to look at. They're coming at you at about 45 miles an hour, and that can be very difficult. I need to move on, so I just will point you to the plans that you have in place on your shelf from several traffic studies paid for by the taxpayers, not by the developers. And I'd encourage you to look at those and see what they offer. This is Durham's Chapel Hill Carborough Comprehensive Traffic Plan published in 2018. It was specifically, this amendment is specifically for Farrington Road. And it shows in this, if you see a red-black dotted line going approximately up the middle, that's an extension of Falcon Bridge, which currently ends at Highway 54. This extends it northward to get in with Farrington, and that will make a big difference to this traffic. Let's do the plan for traffic before you put in all these developments. plans were there first for traffic. Yeah, Danny, talk about it. Appreciate the extra time.
I'm Denny Noggle. I reside at 5151 Niagara Drive. I congratulate Durham for adopting the Vision Zero approach. They've also recently, about 4 months ago, hired a new coordinator. Lauren Grove is her name. I was quite impressed with her interview given only a week or two ago. If you haven't seen it, I'd invite all commissioners to look at the bottom of this slide, and I think it's 20 minutes well taken. This is a way of balancing and helping protect citizens, including senior citizens, as in our community, from traffic accidents and even death. Traffic calming has been an issue. We have worked and made some progress in that direction with Northwood Raven. We're thankful for that, but we believe our work is not done. Why are we so concerned about our aging community? The answers to that are in the 2-page document that you should find and hopefully have read in your read ahead. This was done by 4 physicians in our community. This is the lifestyle we now have. It shows a great many of our population can walk for their health, their welfare. Socializing is so important to us. I've counted 9 people, as indicated in the center photo. 9 people walk adjacent. That's so important to them. As in people in having assistance devices on both the left and the right side, that's also critically important. My final slide, and I'll skip ahead in time, is that we respectfully ask for a pause of 60 days minimum, perhaps. Let's let Laura Grove do her job. Let's please have her give us the best advice on how to keep our senior citizens safe. The decision of these commissioners will determine if our community is safe and our lifestyle is protected. Thank you. And here's the chairman, here's the president of our HOA.
Good evening. My name is Marion Strand. I reside at 108 Pinot Court in the Villas at Culp Arbor. I'm president of the HOA Board of Directors. VCA has 7 extended private driveways that could be mistaken for city roads. 2 ponds with private asphalt walking paths that could be mistaken as inviting public paths. It's VCA's responsibility to maintain these driveways and paths safely. Therefore, they cannot be open to the public. There is currently no path between Creekside Elementary and the Northwood Raven development except through these private paths, which are not public and are not safe for unsupervised children. Children biking or walking to Creekside on our private path unwittingly put senior VCA residents at risk for falls. There's no plan for safe access to Creekside from the proposed development. Prior to approval, NWR should be required to include a written commitment to extend a sidewalk that ends on the north boundary of VCA, property on Farrington Road, all the way to the intersection of Ephesus Church Road and from that corner to the school. In summary, TIA should be rewritten to accurately reflect all growth on Farrington Road and to consider timeline of known road and transit improvements. The following written commitments are needed: to show distribution of detached homes and townhomes through the eastern section of property, to show maximum stories of buildings, not just maximum height, to provide adequate traffic calming measures with NWR, property, and VCA, to provide adequate access to the public sidewalk to Creekside School. Our meetings with Northwood Raven were collegial and productive, but they were terminated by the developer too soon. For the reasons stated in the letter and expanded on tonight, we respectfully request that the Commission continue its consideration on this proposal for a maximum of 60 days so that concerns discussed tonight can be readdressed and resolved between the parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Carol Belinsky.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Carol Belinsky, and I live at 214 Culp Hill Drive. And thank you for this opportunity to speak. First of all, much of the research in the slide presentation could not be presented tonight due to the time constraint of 2 minutes. I urge the members of the commission to refer to the written comments in your handouts, which were emailed to you. We thought we were allotted 3 minutes, but unfortunately that's not the case, even if it is written on the website. A 3-minute time, let alone 2 minutes, does not even compare to the time granted to the developer. 3 points I would like to address. First, a word about our community in Culp Arbor. It's a walking community. Many residents walk along the roads as it's safer. The road pavement is smooth, whereas seams in the concrete sidewalks may be raised, presenting a tripping hazard or an obstacle. Have you ever noticed that runners run on the streets? That's the reason. Whether our senior population uses devices as walkers, adult tricycles, or bicycles, or merely walking solo with a group, the roadway is the preferred and safest way to navigate our neighborhood. Another point is the amount of cars possibly using Niagara versus Farrington Road. One can rightly assume that a good percentage of homes and apartments will have 2 cars. Please do the math. Safety versus capacity. Finally, the city of Durham encourages the senior community to be built. Please do not abandon the city's assurances. Yes, new leadership comes in, I understand that, but there has to be an obligation to past commitments. Therefore, I join my fellow speakers and neighbors in requesting a continuance for the minimum of 60 days, or the developer's rezoning application to be disproved as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the gallery that would like to speak that has not previously signed up? Is there anyone on the Zoom that would like to speak? We have Elizabeth Foster. Please go ahead. Elizabeth Foster, please state your name and your address. We are unable to hear you. Is there anyone else in the Zoom that would like to speak? We're unable to hear Elizabeth Foster. Please use the raise your hand button. Elizabeth Foster, if you're on your phone, I believe you can hit *67 and it will unmute yourself. Is there anyone else on the Zoom that would like to speak? All right, in the time remaining, would the applicant like to address any of the issues brought forward by the community?
Someone left this up here. No problem. Not necessarily. I did just want to say, I think there had been several requests here for a 60-day continuance, and I'll just say, you know, as the applicant, we've met with this neighborhood several times. We've had, I think, more than, I think we had like 9 meetings, several emails. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we have not necessarily satisfied 100% of the things that they have brought up, but we have heard them and we have addressed them, and we have, I think, offered what we can in that regard, and I think we've come up with a better project as a result. So I just wanted to go on record and say, I don't know that a 60-day continuance is going to get us a whole lot closer to anything. We have had several discussions, and so I would say we would rather there be a vote tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. One more time for anyone on the Zoom, if Elizabeth Foster can be heard. And is she? Do you want to try to unmute yourself one more time? Go ahead, you're unmuted. We still can't hear her. All right, at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we are now open for commissioner discussion and questions. Commissioner Cease? No? Yes.
Questions for staff? Arlene, these are transportation related. If you don't mind, that would be great. And a couple of comments as she's walking up. There was a reference in the comments from the public regarding this commission making decisions, and I just want to clarify, as oftentimes community members like yourselves, which is great to have your input in this body, we don't make any decisions, we make recommendations. It's your elected officials that make the decisions regarding rezoning. But we make recommendations, and your input here and at that venue is an important part of the overall process. So thanks. A question regarding some of the concerns that we've heard with the connection to the existing street. The existing street in the neighborhood is public, is that correct? And if it was built today, it would have been required to have sidewalks on both sides, is that correct? It was built under kind of a prior approach to the design standards. Also, on the same topic, the text commitment 8 that speaks to a traffic calming measure, it just references it as generally somewhere internal to the site, but subject to city approval. What are the considerations that would go into and or the likelihood that such a traffic calming device would not be approved by the city?
Right. Earlene Thomas, Transportation. So we did have the opportunity to meet with the developer and community members and have that conversation surrounding the traffic calming measures. I think the ones that are listed in the text commitment are ones that, we would be able to approve within the development.
Okay, great. And then this is a topic that has come up with some prior cases that are either multifamily, well, they're multifamily. The connectivity requirements in the ordinance aren't applied in the same way as they are with if it was single family, is that correct? Because they can access multifamily via private streets and parking lots and driveways.
So Planning Department has clarified that the connectivity standards apply to streets and not necessarily driveways that connect to them.
Great. Okay, thanks. That's it. So then a couple of questions on these points for the applicant, and then I think I'll be done. The commitment for a traffic calming measure somewhere within the site, text commitment number 8. I'm looking at that relative to the Bike Ped Committee recommendations, which specifically recommended a traffic calming feature located near the connection of Niagara on the northern end of the site. Could the commitment be more specific to help address some of the concerns about pass-through traffic?
As Arlene had stated, we had met with transportation about what kind of traffic calming we could accomplish here. Now, I think some of the difficulty of that is stating specifically where it can be without actually having anything designed or proposed on the site plan. My understanding is that the comment you're referring to from the Bike Ped Committee is really a reflection of what the neighbors told the Bike Ped Committee, which they also told us. So it's not like we weren't aware of it when we were having discussions. So I think there is a question as to how the connection to the existing southern terminus of Niagara Drive will go. I don't know if there's gonna be a stop sign there. If there's not a stop sign there, what they're asking for is a mid-block crossing there. And I'm not sure that we're going to commit to that.
Yeah,
that will be approved.
Yeah, I agree that a mid-block crossing would probably be excessive, but some of the other features that are represented or devices that are represented could be seemingly appropriate in that segment that you're connecting from your east-west connection going on. Just something that I think would be good to consider.
And I might be missing the point. I think we did commit to putting parking on parallel parking on the Niagara extension.
Parking is, I read that as appearing south, but so as I don't run out of time and allow some others here to speak, let me just ask one other question. I noticed the access drives are labeled appropriately north and south as public, but the one to Farrington is labeled as private. So that would be a connection east-west through the site, but private. And I can understand a lot of reasons why you would want that, but can there be a commitment to ensure that that's at least open for access to the public?
Oh, yeah, the access out to Farrington Road would absolutely be open to the public.
Okay, so can we work with staff to incorporate that going forward as a commitment?
Sure, and for what it's worth, my understanding is like gated access is no longer allowed, so I'm not sure how we would prevent it from being a public access, but yeah, absolutely, we could work with staff on appropriate language for that.
I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Valentine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During the public comments, there was a particular comment that was made about assurances that were provided during what sounds like has been very fruitful engagement, but they're not being reduced to writing. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think maybe some of what that was is where the height was limited. I think we've put graphically on our plan, which maybe I can pull up. Okay, so this is what the development plan looks like, this bottom one. This top one was maybe what it looked like previously. It was changed as a result of some of the conversations we had. So this area here, so like in here in this rectangle, that area is limited on the development plan to 35 feet of building height, which I think that was before SCAD, so it might be more like 40 feet with the way they've changed the how height is measured. But regardless, this area was expanded, you can see from where we were. This is based off conversations that we had with the community. Now, some of the conceptual drawings that we have shared with the community show, maybe shorter product than the full-blown apartments, but they are conceptual. So the idea here is that the shortest and most I guess, compatible with the existing neighborhood unit types are going to be closest to that neighborhood to allow for that transition throughout the rest of the community. So I don't know if that's what they're referring to specifically, but I could understand how some of the concepts that were shown aren't 100% reflected on the development plan, but they are conceptual. The idea is to provide that transition. I think that is reflected here on the development plan. But, some of the other things we've talked about, I mean, it is kind of difficult for me to I think they have been reduced to writing or graphic commitments on the development plan. I mean, one that just pops out to me on this page is the commitment to offset these 2 points, so we're not creating, kind of a straightaway where people might speed through. This is itself designed a more circuitous route, so it is kind of itself a traffic calming measure, in addition to the other traffic calming measures that we've committed to on the development plan as well.
actually have an additional, I guess, a comment, just generally, was brought up during the public comments, the amount of development that's going on in the Farrington area. As you're thinking through this project, how does this impact on the larger development going on in that area? How does this fit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the comprehensive plan, newly adopted comprehensive plan, kind of helps answer that question. To the north, where we have existing neighborhood, that area is shown on the place site map as established residential. Generally speaking, that means it is developed appropriately and is set to kind of stay that way. Now, in the Farrington Road area where there's a lot of development, you've actually got two different designations. So this property and kind of east and west of this property in the same, let's say, latitude, that area is designated on the place type map for mixed residential. And in that context, this project fits very nicely. The property across Farrington Road is in that mixed residential place type map category. That has already been zoned and is in site plan, and I think maybe in development for single family detached homes, basically, right? So that's one of the mixes of residential unit types that you would want to see throughout that designation. Then to the west of our property, that goes out to George King Road. Not that this property touches George King Road, but it's that direction. Those properties are developed on large lot single family as it is right now. And so, they are, again, kind of appropriate type of housing type. So what we're establishing here in the mixed residential place type designation is apartments. Now, the use technically is, I think it's just one use, multifamily. But the unit types are going to be, if you drove by it, you will see units that look like detached homes, you will see units that look like townhouse homes, and you will see traditional apartments. Right now, I think technically it's all a multifamily use because of the way the UDO works. These will all be multiple residential units on one tax parcel, which would qualify it as a multifamily use. But I think from a unit type standpoint, it really is going to look like detached single-family townhomes and apartments. So it helps achieve the ultimate vision for the mixed residential place type designation. And then south of this area, I think that's where you have the, you're testing me, transit opportunity area, I believe. And so those, you're correct that a lot of those properties have been already approved or are in rezoning. And, we're familiar with what they're proposing there. And some of them, one of them in particular, has got quite an extensive mix of uses. So I think you'll see this area over time develop. I think it's looking like it's people are taking the comprehensive plan seriously, and this site is, or this area is developing consistent with the comprehensive plan primarily.
Commissioner Cutright.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question. You've committed to, I believe it was 8 affordable. First question is, what are the parameters of those affordable? Is it 30-year?
Right, it's
60%?
30-year, is it 80%, I believe? Yeah, 80% for 30 years.
Okay. Have you given any consideration to another 8 or so units? A lot of units you're putting up to only give 8 seems a little short.
Right. So we're looking at it. So part of the, I think it's safe to say that the affordable units would end up in the apartments. So we're looking at this as how many apartments. We don't really have the exact mix. The concept, as you've seen, has changed a couple times. So it is something that we're looking at. I don't think I could really make a different commitment tonight, but I'm aware that 8 out of the overall 415 units is, maybe other projects have committed to more. But this, I think, is related to the split in the unit type, which isn't quite settled yet.
Appreciate it. Just to be clear, so my comments will reflect sort of a strong need to see more affordable. And so, I think that's the direction to go. Naturally, we need some housing, but we need all types of housing. And I feel like
at 400 units, we should be able to get 20 or so. Appreciate it.
Understood. Thank you.
Commissioner Koback.
Thank you, Chair Cameron. First, I had a couple questions for staff. And the first was just getting at this question of an aggregate analysis when there are multiple projects in the pipeline but haven't yet been completed. To what extent are those factored into the TIAs? I suppose that's Erlene. Thank you.
Erlene Thomas, Transportation. So all approved developments are accounted for and factored into the traffic analysis. Now, any that came after this submittal won't be reflected in there, but those TIAs would include all of the previous ones.
Okay, so if they've been approved, they'd be included?
Yes, or underway.
Or underway?
Time, yes.
Okay, thank you. The next question was about the tree coverage. On page 2 of the zoning map change report, it stated that the minimum requirement was 20% and this project would deliver 20%, but it looked like in the development plan, it was 7% and 7%. So I'm just curious about which one is the correct number, unless I misread the document. I guess I was thinking it was for staff, but it could be for either, but I'm sure you would likely know the answer to that question as well, because it's different in two parts of the documents. I'm curious which is the correct number.
Yeah, so it's, my understanding is we're in the compact neighborhood here. The requirement there will be 7%. That is what I believe we've committed to. I don't know where the 20% came from. I can't speak to that.
Okay. So that would then need to be corrected in that document? I think while we're looking for that, I'll also just reiterate the statements of Commissioner Cutright. You know, for a development of this size, you know, to see less than, 2% of units reserved for as affordable, despite the 80% in 30 years, I think that's something that we'd like to see higher, to reflect the desires of the community and the comprehensive plan around, units of all types and at all prices. So I just want to second that comment. And also just want to acknowledge the comments. First of all, appreciate all the engagement from the community on this issue, the thoroughness, the deep work you've done on this. And I hear that concern around the change around age restriction. And that's something that was, a commitment was made at that time, even though now the comprehensive plan does push for more of a mixed age being the new approach. I'm also curious, at the time that commitment was made, how would we have thought about this development on an adjacent property? Would that have been considered, or would that not have been included under an age restriction?
I first want to answer your question about the 7% tree coverage. Since it is in a compact tier, it's 7% required, so we'll need to make a change to the report.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Just thinking about like what the responsibilities are, even if the priorities have changed, which I think all of us here have had to adapt to changes in the comprehensive plan. I was just curious, being on an adjacent lot, how should we think about those age restriction limits that were kind of phased out?
So yeah, that's a good question. Basically the comprehensive plan does not want to see age-restricted communities. We have policies that say we should not have age-restricted communities because we're looking to have more of a heterogeneous neighborhoods, areas where people of a variety of different ages, different backgrounds, and so forth can all live within one community. When we're adjacent to an age-restricted community, I think the best thing we want to do is try to make sure that we have designs in the new communities that can incorporate and address and acknowledge the senior citizens who are going to be living next door to that, and make sure we can accommodate them as best as possible through proper design.
Okay, thank you. And one last question, I think this would be for the developer, and also a comment. And this is something I haven't heard yet, so I don't feel it's repetitive. But it's about this question of access to Creekside Elementary, and the fact that there are private access points that it sounds like it's been shared would be the primary routes that folks would use. And so it seems like, you know, if we're doing any sort of planning, you kind of look where people move and you try to design for that. You know, is this a concern that can be accommodated to provide that sort of connectivity? One question, and two, do you agree with the fact that otherwise, if you don't provide for that, that these private access drives will be the way that people will flow to get to the elementary, or is there another way for residents to access?
So I'll start with your last question first. For what it's worth, I grew up here in Durham. I grew up in Parkwood, and throughout elementary school, I walked to school and back home. I wasn't a bus rider, and I didn't. My parents didn't drive me as an elementary school student. And that was 0.7 miles, thereabouts. A lot of that was not accommodated by any sidewalk. Some of it was. Well, I could say I'm here today, so I think it can be done safely. Now, as far as whether new residents would use private walkways within the Village Culp Arbor neighborhood, I mean, they have suggested that they would not allow the general public to use those. So, I mean, I guess the answer is no. But I would agree with the notion that, yeah, generally people try to find a safe route to wherever they're going, and maybe the safest, shortest route. I can't really speak to whether there is a connection from Village Culp Arbor to the elementary school. That would strike me as odd, because they have said that, you know, they've expressed their views on school-age children. I'll put it that way. And the notion, you know, the idea that this developer would solely be responsible for providing public sidewalk up Farrington, down Ephesus Church to the school, I mean, it's not something we can accommodate. We don't even know if the right-of-way is there to do it. And so we're not going to commit to that. But I will say, you know, developers in general pay into a fund for the city for sidewalks, so it's not that they're not contributing to the ultimate or future installment of sidewalk, but I don't know that we would make a commitment specific to having sidewalk along that route.
And I know, thank you for that. I know part of the issue is at this point in time, sometimes it's hard to know all the details, and so it's hard for you to make commitments. Is this the end of the engagement process? Or will there be continued work with the community when it comes to more specific plans around traffic calming, around safe routes to schools, you know, Vision Zero? Do you envision future work together as the specifics come together?
I mean, I don't see why not, right? Look, we've had several conversations with the community, and and we'll continue to have conversations with them. At some point, you know, the rezoning is a public hearing process, right? But the site plan is not. That doesn't mean we can't work with them on that, but how, you know, I can't promise any kind of level of input or, you know, authority that would be granted to the neighborhood for that. And, you know, for what it's worth, I think Northwood has already been pretty transparent about what they're hoping to accomplish here. I don't know why they wouldn't continue to be transparent with the community.
Okay. You know, and you have done more than a lot of cases we see in terms of engagement. It's not always about quantity, right?
Absolutely.
But I would encourage you to continue that openness and that engagement if this does proceed, to try and meet some of these additional needs, particularly around safety and traffic calming.
Yeah, understood.
I want to echo, I thought our commissioners have done a great job in laying out some very critical questions, and I thank you for that. I've heard the community talk about safety, traffic, height, single units where they're located, and commitments that haven't been followed through on. I've heard the applicants say that they have met commitments, and there's been a lot of discussion, but there's still a disconnect for me. Still a disconnect as to where the old proverbial rubber meets the road. So my question for the applicant, first of all, is tell me how the development and flow for Niagara Drive will work. Because I see the site map. I'm just trying to visualize how much flow will go to Niagara, which will be also in the development.
Your question is how will the flow of traffic
From the development to the VCA through Niagara Drive work?
So, and Earl, I might ask for your assistance here just to describe, because I mean.
I'm sorry, I can't hear real well.
Yeah, I was just asking our traffic consultant to be available, because they, he ultimately did a traffic study for this and made some assumptions about that. But in general, this is not. In general, so there will be homes in this area, right? And they will be split by this north-south road, which will be offset. They will also have an access off Farrington Road. So, it is my assumption that, the majority of people are going to be, first of all, living, in line with this and south of that on this site. And so it's my understanding that most of those people are projected to use the Farrington Road entrance or exit, I should say. Where I think the most influx of traffic through Village Culp Arbors is actually from inbound traffic southbound. Is that? In theory. Yeah, so in theory, the most traffic that results from this development that will be routed through the existing community would be the inbound traffic that might be headed south on Farrington Road, come into the Culp Arbor neighborhood, and continue south on the extension of Niagara to get into the neighborhood, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. My follow-up question is, just silly of me, can this development proceed without access to Niagara?
Well, no, the UDO requires that connection to be.
Okay, then thank you. I've got a couple other questions. We haven't talked about schools, and based on the data that was in the applicant's data, they're all at capacity other than middle school, which is like 0.25 or 0.35, 0.25. And then you're adding potentially another 129 students at about $700,000 impact. How is that going to be addressed? I didn't see any proffers about covering costs on impact to schools in anything that I read.
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry, nor did I read anything about addressing the school impact either.
Well, what was the first thing? I thought you said
the proffer for the cost impact on the schools. We'd have to deal with the question in our community about how to deal with the access to schools if they're already at capacity. But it's the first one, proffer for the school impact of $700,000.
Yeah, that's something that we had talked about internally. Now, the $700,000 is not quite the number that we're looking at. I think the figure in the staff report is related to what the county would expect to put in on a per student basis. Of course, people in this community will be paying into that tax fund. So a lot of that cost is already covered by the increase, by the new residents to begin with, just like we all pay taxes in the city.
So no proffer is what you're telling me?
Well, no, I think we are willing to make a proffer. I just don't think it would be $700,000.
And if you were to make one, are you willing to make one tonight or?
Yeah, I think we can make a commitment tonight to provide a one-time commitment to Durham Public Schools. This is something that we talked about already. And give me a second. I can probably reduce that to a number. Yeah, 1 second.
Chairwoman. Chair. I'm going to ask a question while you're ready. I'm sorry. I was going to ask a question of the community. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. We would make a commitment to provide a one-time commitment to Durham Public Schools in the amount of $64,500.
$4,500? Did you?
$64,500.
Thank you. If I could ask the community a question. I understand the impacts that you're talking about. I understand the ability to walk roads, believe me, versus sidewalks. I get it. You want a 60-day pause because of transportation, looking at the safety issues, disconnects, in your view, between what you felt was a commitment versus the applicant. What exactly, and one of you, please come up, what do you expect to happen in those 60 days? And if nothing changes after 60 days and we're back here, what's the outcome?
So,
I'm sorry, you're really not supposed to ask that.
oh,
Oh, not to the applicants? Okay.
This is not the
Turn, we
public.
wanted to talk.
I apologize for ignorance.
We were being quoted, so.
No, that's fine. Sorry, Chair. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm slow in the uptake. So I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess right now, because I do want to get with the staff about some questions about this particular case and some questions that I have about some of the community questions. So it is 6:58. We'll come back at 7:03. Thank you.
Owning a home provides a sense of financial stability, family, community, and pride. But housing prices are now higher than ever, making it hard for many Durham residents to afford their first home. That's why the City of Durham is offering the Down Payment Assistance Program to support eligible individuals with up to $80,000 in 0% interest forgivable loans to purchase a house within the city limits. Visit this site or call to find out if you qualify for the program.
We, the people.
Nosotros, de gente.
我们人民.
Hum sab log. We the people hold these truths.
To be self-evident that all men
And women are created equal.
And shall be afforded
The inalienable right
to fair housing.
The City of Durham and HUD are committed to ensuring that everyone is treated equitably when searching for a place to call home.
Call the meeting back to order. All right, Commissioner Cease, you want to go?
Sure, thank you. A couple of points that I think have not been made, or at least not in the way that I want to address them. First of all, there was a reference to the hiring of the Vision Zero coordinator. I don't think there are too many people more excited than I am, and a number of folks on this commission, that the city has made that hire. And so I wanted to acknowledge that. And in fact, much of the task of that role pertains to a lot of these issues, but across a lot of different contexts. That is, how places have been built across our city over different periods of time. And I just reflect on the fact that I'm fortunate to live in a neighborhood that has ample sidewalks, adequate sidewalks, and every single day, because of where I live and what's nearby, there are people who are moving about the neighborhood to the neighborhood park via whether with mobility devices or assistance on both sides of them. The sidewalks accommodate that. The streets are traffic calmed because of the design standards. And to me, I think there were really three critical issues here tonight. One is the affordable housing. You've heard what I think a number of commissioners here believe is important there, and I think you'll encounter that with the elected officials as well, based on their comments around those issues. The second issue is that this is consistent with the place type map, and the place type map was a product of a fairly extensive comprehensive plan effort, years of engagement, lots of work. It doesn't mean that every parcel that is identified with a particular intended use was nailed correctly, but there is a lot of intentionality and a lot of effort expressed in what that place types map represents. And this application, I think it's important to acknowledge, it is consistent with that. To me, the biggest challenge, and this is the third item, is that this issue that has been expressed by the Culp Arbor community with regards to connectivity and traffic concerns. And a lot of the challenges there, I think, are a product of it having been built in a different time with a different set of design standards. But that street is a public street, and connectivity is important. How that connection is made, whether it be via traffic calming measures or certain devices, that's also important. Those are, as the applicant indicated, things that are typically resolved at site plan stage, but I do think that needs to remain at the top of the list of how to make that connection carefully. But I'm going to fall back on the broader consideration of all these issues, but that place types map is kind of a guiding principle with full support in my comments, even though I'll be supporting the project, in my comments supporting what the commissioners here, some of my colleagues have addressed regarding what is really seemingly insufficient commitment to affordable housing, right around 2%. That number really seems to need to be higher based on the broader needs of our community and the surroundings in this area, and not just the availability of affordable housing, but affordable housing in this part of our city. So that's what I'll end with. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Harris.
I have a question for the applicant, specifically concerning policy 85 for the UDO about new developments and tree coverage and tree canopy and mature tree canopy being dispersed throughout a new development to maintain a consistent mature tree canopy wherever possible. There are numerous mature trees on this site. I believe the largest one I saw was a 48 oak. 40 oaks are generally 200 years or older. So what part of this proposal helps meet that policy to make a design such that these mature trees and this mature tree canopy will be preserved so that Durham doesn't have to wait 200 years to reestablish it?
I think consistent with that policy or not. Ultimately, I think that's what the planning staff evaluates. And I mean, don't know, Dan, are you able to speak to which trees specifically? I mean, I believe you all have done somewhat of a tree survey, and I don't know if you can speak to it. I certainly don't know the particulars.
I certainly can. Thanks, Neil. Dan Jewell, Thompson Hutton, landscape architect. Yes, what we're committing to at a minimum is the western part of the site. There's a stream partially on the property. There's a stream buffer, and there are quite a bit of mature trees in there. We are committing to saving that area, and that will be at least 7% of the site. We're aware that there's other mature trees on the property. They may or may not be located in areas where they could necessarily be saved. We'll certainly look at that. You know, as a landscape architect, I don't go out of my way to cut trees down. And as we get into site plan and careful design, we'll look at that. I can't at this time say we will save that 48-inch tree, but I can say at this time that we will preserve all those trees in the stream buffer where there are steep slopes, and those are by far the most sensitive areas of the site, where land disturbance and tree cutting would negatively affect the water quality of that creek, which eventually flows into Jordan Lake.
So no commitment to policy 85 that the tree canopy will be distributed throughout the development?
There will be other tree coverage areas on the site in the where we have landscape buffers along the front and a few areas along the north side where villages of Culp Harbor are. I can't commit to those, though, being tree preservation areas. They may be tree replacement areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are, I've heard a lot about the calming, and I realize that it'll be laid out more specifically, but I still don't have what my wife would call warm and fuzzy. I don't see the connection. I also am seeing with the layout of the buildings relative to what was presented at different meetings to what it is today, I've seen sort of a better buffer in terms of the height, the type of units, to try to work within the community that you're adjacent to. That's just a reaction I have from looking at the various site maps. I do applaud you for recognizing school impact. Thank you. I realize property taxes will eventually catch up, but it is a concern to me on many projects about the capacity of schools and how we're looking at that, sort of like transportation. I heard the staff, and thank you, staff, for the transportation connection about current projects, future projects, but I see a disconnect with that many projects in that area about the unintended consequences, about how many cars will show up actually, what the workflow, the degradation of the roads. So I'm just trying to get into context, but I appreciate, Commissioner Cease, you saying within the confines of the comprehensive plan of what fits within that and the overall intent versus years ago, which is a different environment versus today and the objectives that are trying to be met. I would say, though, and I think you said this well, sometimes we look at sort of that plan as its own roadmap when in fact we need to step back within the communities that we're impacting and ask ourselves what are those sort of trade-offs to meet. But thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Cutright. Anyone else? Anyone else have any comments? Are we ready to move this forward? We are. May I have a motion to move this case forward?
Chair, as it relates to case.
Oh, sorry.
Chair Cameron, if I could just ask the applicant to confirm the 2 additional commitments that were made tonight. What we heard was first that the access road from Farrington Road will be public.
We'll have a public access.
Have a public
easement.
access.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second is the one-time commitment to Durham Public Schools of $64,500.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
We're ready.
Thank you.
Chair, as it relates to case Z2300020 Farrington Road Multifamily, I make a motion that we send this case and the associated proffers forward to City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Valentine to move case Z2300020 forward with a favorable recommendation to City Council. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
No.
Commissioner Cutright.
Yes.
Commissioner Durham.
No.
Commissioner Johnson.
No.
Commissioner Koback.
Yes.
Commissioner McIver.
Yes.
Commissioner Cease.
Yes.
Commissioner Valentine.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Commissioner Wauck.
No.
The motion passes 7-4.
Thank you. Moving on to committee updates. At this time, we don't have any committee updates. Moving on to new business, new UDO update.
Hey, good evening, Madam Commissioner. Commission, Bo Dobrinsky, Assistant Director of the Planning Department. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely.
Am I on?
Yeah.
There we go.
It's better.
I've never had a mic actually short enough for me when I walked up to it. It threw me off. All right, as I'm sure some of you know, we have contracted with Code Studio and their team of subconsultants to work on a new unified development ordinance. This project is thank you, really to focus on to implement the comprehensive plan. We've also contracted with Tawana Allen for engagement and working with engagement ambassadors. They began their work, sort of kickoff introductions late last year. We had held open houses in February. Last month, they presented to the Joint City-County Planning Committee an approach and an audit of our existing UDO. So I'm here to sort of update you on status and what that means and what the steps are moving forward. So they presented their audit to the JCCPC. Some direction was provided, sort of four key themes in their recommendation. They're really going to look at concentrating density within the urban growth boundary, build up, not out. That's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Really focusing on streamlining and consolidating zoning districts. Big piece of their analysis was that we had too many that were similar. And so that'll really help simplify things for both development community, you all, staff especially. This is the next one really is probably the biggest one and also maybe the most obvious. They will be aligning zoning districts with the comprehensive plan place types. That'll help your lives tremendously as you're making the recommendations that you do. And then, of course, place a greater emphasis on form and less focus on density. So right now we spend a lot of time talking about density and some fairly, some numbers that don't necessarily speak to the outcomes of the development themselves or the feel, certainly as it relates to the engagement that we heard with the comprehensive plan. So they will take this guidance and move forward with drafting the document itself. They will be working on the first module, which will be these districts, and sort of we'll see the consolidation of them, and then subsequently it will be development standards themselves that would be applied to these districts. We will begin getting some drafts August, September. At that time, and then of course sort of that will become an iterative process, a great deal. There'll be a lot of back and forth in terms of comments from staff, comments from said committee, and then of course there'll be a lot of public input throughout the process as well. So that's where we're at. I sent you all a copy of the presentation that was given, as well as a copy of or a link to the YouTube, so you may have already gone through this material. If any of you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer any now.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cartwright.
And this, I guess, maybe is will be answered later, but just from like a technical standpoint, if you're consolidating zonings, naturally there are all the zonings have different development standards associated with them, and so if you look at a map and you take those zonings that have been consolidated, I assume that those development standards will apply to the map. I don't know, take all the RSs, for example. Let's just say all those are combined. Now, do you have all this flexibility now that, you know, again, it sort of gets a little technical, but let's just say you had an RS8 or an RS5 that converted, or RS20 that converted to an RS5. Now you have more flexibility on that. Now,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cease.
Thank you. Thanks for the update. Two questions. One, with regards to, I think, what you described as an August, September kind of time frame for beginning to receive materials or draft materials on the first module. Could you say a bit more about the schedule in terms of what that iterative process looks like relative to the endpoint? How many months over which do they or staff anticipate stretching out those iterative sets of exchanges?
Yeah. No, I'm really glad you asked that. So the sort of the overall project and the schedule that we've presented and you've seen in the materials really has us wrapping up the drafting of the code itself, all of the modules, sort of spring of next year, February, March. And obviously then at that point we would move into public review and revisions. The adoption process itself, they'll probably need to keep some flexibility in mind as we go through with engagement.
Okay, and so that it's still consistent with what their original schedule was?
Correct. We've got some additional details sort of internally about specific modules and when they'll be delivered. And now, even that, we need to keep in mind there'll be some flexibility because, for example, depending on what the comments are, the revisions may take longer.
A separate question. And a couple of things are intertwined here. So the alignment with proposed districts with the comprehensive plan and place types map sounds like an excellent move. Much of the discussion around the comprehensive plan process and even actions by the city since then, as evidenced through the hire of the Vision Zero coordinator, focused on the ways in which different modes of mobility can be accommodated within the public rights of way. Moving in a form-based, or moving to a zoning ordinance that emphasizes form more, kind of moves us in the direction, although this term I don't know that has been used explicitly as a form-based code, but oftentimes those, I think, appropriately address design standards for public spaces, thoroughfare standards, roadway standards, but yet our ordinance today doesn't really do that with the exception of the design districts. What discussion has there been, or what expectations are there for ways in which we can better integrate the public space standards and thoroughfare standards within this zoning code modification?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Commissioner Cease, as this is one of my favorite topics, looking at the new UDO. Certainly those themes are throughout the comprehensive plan. There's many policies that you referenced. So we will certainly be evaluating that and moving forward with that, and that has been discussed with Code Studio significantly. It's also been discussed internally quite a bit. In terms of the details and what that looks like, I don't have those answers yet. As you already know, we've got sort of some cross sections in the current code that are applicable in the design districts, and they have been relatively successful in terms of how we've applied them. There's some pros and cons, and some learning experience. So we certainly know we're going to be moving in that direction. But in terms of the overall scope of that or details, I do not have that answer.
I'm glad to hear that the conversation is being had, and I'm sure there may be more resistance possibly internally than just from the consultants. The consultants are here to help us get to where we want.
Absolutely.
I hope that everyone involved will reflect back on the comprehensive plan discussions around that point and take this opportunity through the UDO rewrite to really push for it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
I appreciate the questions because obviously the devils are in the detail. And I think it would be advantageous to share as much information as you go through this process like you're doing today. So as we get more comfortable with where this is going and how those details will be framed, it will be helpful to continue to provide feedback and input based on the questions I heard, which were good today. So thank you for that. I wish you luck with the continued process. I also would be wrong not to also go to a different topic. For those that are mothers, I forgot to say belatedly, I hope you had a good Mother's Day. And for those that are dealing with the memorial services for Memorial Day, I hope we remember you well. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? None? Awesome. All righty. Any other staff announcements? Aaron or Grace, any staff announcements?
There are none.
There are none. We are hereby adjourned. Yes.